Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Let's Talk Elephants. I'm your host, Destiny Farley, and today I'm interviewing Dawn Bailey, who is actually my grandma. That being said, the nature of today's episode is a little different than usual because obviously it hits much closer to home than any of my previous guests. It's not easy to talk about any of the topics that I interview my guests about, but it's particularly difficult when it's a peek directly into some of my family life. So I just ask that, as per usual, everyone remains respectful and open minded when listening to our conversation because it's all stuff that has directly impacted me and shaped me into the person I am today. And it takes a lot of courage for both of us to share it with you. My grandma and grandpa were married for almost 50 years. My grandpa passed away. It'll be 3 years this October. Their relationship was unique and tumultuous, to say the least. It was very complex. And naturally, that had different effects on different people in our family. It affected my grandma differently than it affected my mom, then my aunt, then me and my brothers, and so on and so forth. I asked my grandma if she would be willing to share what her experience with marriage was like because she got married very young. And my grandpa was extremely possessive and controlling, but he was all she ever knew because she got married young. It's a difficult topic to discuss because it's a look into how people are multifaceted, so they can have both very good and very bad things about them. My grandpa loved very deeply, but it manifested in ways that were not healthy and were possessive and were even dangerous at times. My grandma's going to discuss some of the challenges of getting married young when you don't really know yourself or your partner, what it was like growing up in their marriage, and how her life has changed since he passed away. So, Grandma, can you please just briefly introduce yourself and tell everyone a little bit about how you grew up and then how you eventually ended up meeting Grandpa?
All right. Well, my name is Dawn Bailey. I was actually born in Canada, and I came to this country when I was almost 6 years old. I grew up basically in Campbell, California, but our family life was a little bit different because every summer we went back to Canada. So we had kind of like the best of both worlds. We spent our school years in California and our summers in Canada. It was really a wonderful way to grow up. And then my parents got divorced, and a lot of things changed in my life. Suddenly, I had all the freedom in the world. My dad moved out. My mom was very kind, but she was really very easygoing with us kids. So, at a very young age, I met my husband. But I was so young, I just didn't know any better. I had no guidance. My dad wasn't in the picture, and my mom was just too kind. And then I made a terrible mistake because I got pregnant. So I thought the right thing to do was to stay in the relationship and stay married. But when I look back, and it might sound odd to say this, but I don't think that people realize that women can get trapped too. It's not the men that go, oh, she got pregnant, she wanted to trap them. But we get trapped too. I did with my life what I thought was right. I stayed married. I stayed in a very possessive, controlling relationship because I was too young to know any better. So my advice to people out there is, it might sound wrong to say this. Some people would say, oh, she's not, that's like not, it's like asking people to live in sin, but you should live with somebody before you marry them. You should get to know them. And for God's sakes, please don't make the mistake I did and get pregnant at a young age. And all of a sudden your life goes from you're a young, kind of carefree teenager to a mom with responsibilities. And then you're married to somebody that just totally controls your life.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a hard way to live. I mean, over the years, our relationship got better. You kind of got used to maybe being controlled, but you never felt free. Like, I would go to work and I had to be home after work. If I was late, he was like, "Where were you? What were you doing?" It's a terrible way to live. And years ago, and it was funny because I had two kids by then, and I read an article in one of the magazines or newspaper. It was like a Dear Abby, Ann Landers, and it gave signs of what not to marry. Like somebody that is jealous, somebody that's possessive, somebody that takes you away from your family. And I was like, oh my God, it hits all the marks, but older and wiser. Um, I don't know. I mean, I can't say it was all bad.
Right.
At some point in my life, I thought, oh, well, he just loves me so much that he's jealous. But that's not love. That's just possessiveness, So you you learn. I mean, I used to not want to go or do anything or even work because of how possessive. But I got to the point in my life where I said, you know what, I've just got to do this. And just, he's going to have to learn to live with it.
Was there was there ever a point where you felt like you were in love with him? Or do you think that you were just like too young to even know what love looked like? Or were you trying to convince yourself that you were in love with him because you knew you were in a bad situation? Or, what initially drew you to him? And at what point was it very quickly that you realized that he wasn't for you and that you weren't in love and that it wasn't going to be good? Or was it good at the beginning? Like, when did things start to shift?
Well, when you're young like that, when somebody pays attention to you, yeah, you think you're in love. But to be honest with you, even at my age, I'm not sure I even know what love is. Because it was never that, oh, I can't live without him kind of love, or, you know, just, you just don't know because you're just too young. You're too young to know.
Mm-hmm.
You can't meet the love of your life when you're 16, 17 years old because you don't know what love is.
Mm-hmm.
And then suddenly you're with the same person, and yeah, of course you're attracted to him. And there were things about him that I look back and I laugh at, or I feel like the comfort zone when you're with somebody for so long. We liked doing things together, but there were so many things that we didn't like that you find yourself, you know, I mean, to say that I wasn't in love, I couldn't tell you. I would say yes. I did stay my entire life. I spent my whole life with them. But I couldn't tell you for sure when you're young like that. Should
Yeah.
never, ever, get married at a young age.
Yeah.
I mean, it should actually be against the law if you want to,
Yeah.
your parents signed to let you get married, but you shouldn't because you don't know. And that's a lifetime commitment. And, you don't want to wind up with your family, I mean, nowadays, I guess it's normal. Everybody, well, is this your first wife, second wife, third wife? Or your ex, the word ex is used commonly all the time, but it's not. I always thought that you get married, you stay married. Because my parents divorced, it kind of changed our family, our dynamics. So I didn't want that for my kids. But at the same time, he wasn't the perfect father or the perfect husband. He did have issues. And he, used to tell me stories about his mom and dad fighting all the time and the jealousy. So, I feel like it kind of came with the territory. Maybe, I hope to God that the cycle's broken with my kids, that they would never be that way, because I wasn't that way. And it's not the way I was raised. I mean, my mom went to Canada for the summer. My father stayed behind and just sent her money. And not to say that that's the ideal marriage or relationship that you should have, but my God, you shouldn't have to worry about going to work and being late, coming home.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, stuff like that shouldn't happen
Yeah.
to somebody.
Was he the only person that you had ever been with, like, in your life? Like, your whole life, he's the only person, like, you hadn't been with anybody before him?
No, I was right out of high school. I had
Yeah.
like one boyfriend
Yeah.
before him. So you don't really know,
Right.
especially at that age. You can't know. what is a kind, loving relationship when you've never had one. You've got nothing to compare to.
I can't say that your guys' relationship was kind and loving, but obviously I saw a different part of it growing up than Mom and Christy did.
Yeah.
But I just outside looking in, I know that you loved him because, and I think I've talked about this before on my podcast. I don't know, but one, I think there's no way to not love somebody that you've spent that much of your life with, right? Like you know the ins and outs of somebody. There may be parts of them that you hate, but naturally I feel like there's also going to be parts of them that you love and that you built your life with. And the way that I felt like I could see that, and it made me emotional because obviously I saw you guys bicker a lot, but when he was in hospice, and I had gotten there before anyone else had gotten there, right before you had gotten there. And I was kind of sitting in a chair in the corner, and he was over in the bed. And you had come in, and he was nonverbal at this point. Like he wasn't speaking anymore, and you could tell that he was already kind of gone. But I remember that you were leaning over him, and you were like, "Brent, I'm here. It's Dawn," and you were like, "I love you." And that was like the first time I had ever heard you say that to him. And I knew it made me emotional at that time because that's how I knew that it was done, like that he was passing, for you to be able to openly say that to him. And I also know that you loved him because you took care of him right until the end. He was in hospice for maybe 2 or 3 days before he passed. And there's a lot of people that, it's a lot to take care of someone who's passing. It's a commitment, as you know.
Yeah.
So for you to, and this could just be how you are as a person too, like you're just a loving person, but you basically gave months and months and months of your life to taking care of him when you didn't have to. Like you could have had a nurse come in and handle it, or put him in a home, or put him in hospice sooner than you did. But, whether you felt the love, that's still an act of love, which I think is more important. So, and it's a testament to your character, and regardless of whatever happened in your guys' relationship, like you were still able to show up for him at the end. And I think that like you fulfilled your promise to him, like your marriage to him. And so you should at least have peace in knowing that. Backtracking a little bit to when you guys first were together, when did you start to notice signs of like, he might be a little off, or he's a little crazy, or he's a little possessive, or a little jealous?
Well, I really think because I was so young, I really didn't notice the signs and didn't really think it was that big of a deal. But I do remember early on in a relationship, he was like saying things like, "I don't want my wife to ever work. Women go out to work and all they do is cheat on their husbands and they get in trouble." And I'm thinking, who thinks like that?
Yeah.
And I was determined that I was going to work, because I literally said to him, "Well, you know what? I've got to take care of me. I've got to take care of, what if something happens to you?" Because he was a painter, and I used to help him, and I did for a lot of years. But I said, something happens to you, nobody's going to hire me as a painter. I'm a small woman. I said, I have to do something to take care of me in case something happens to you. So even though he didn't like it, I literally went to work. So even though he was controlling and he was very jealous, I think I look back and I think he didn't have complete control, but I did let him be jealous and possessive. He would show up at my work sometimes just to spy on me, which is ridiculous. But and I was never like that, but I wasn't raised that way. I think, again, it goes back to the way he was raised. A lot of it's like a vicious cycle that you don't want to continue. But I was so young, and you kind of ease into it. I mean, we didn't get married and have a baby, and all of a sudden he's like, "Where were you? What were you doing?" It's it gradually goes into your life, and all of a sudden you're like, hey, this is, this is ridiculous. I can't just be like a shadow and, be behind him kind of and live my life that way. I need to have a life also. I mean, he was possessive, controlling, but I did go out, get a job, create a career, and I liked the job. It wasn't hard. It was, obviously a job that he could come sneak and take a peek at me. But, then you just get stronger as you get older. But
Mm-hmm.
again, it goes back to you shouldn't get married young.
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't, I mean, it should be a law that you have to be 25 years old, truthfully, to get married. But of course, I know that's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
But, if you're so young that your parents have to sign that marriage certificate, should never be allowed. Should not be allowed.
Do you feel like, I mean, this might be a strong way to put it, but do you feel like he stripped you of your identity, like as an individual?
I do. And I feel like and I really almost sometimes think, what kind of a person would I be? I mean, I think I'm a kind, nice person. Um, I'm kind of a boring person because I just go home and do nothing. But
Well, I'm boring with you
but
then.
would I have been like that had I been single? I really don't know. You know, I don't think that a lot of that would change. I think that that kindness is in you. Um, Whether you like to go out and do bad things is in you or not. But you never know because you never get that opportunity to grow as a person. I do feel like in the last, since he passed, I've come more into myself.
Mm-hmm.
I realized I used to think, well, he's the reason I stay home all the time, or he's the reason that when I get off work, I go directly home. But you know what? I actually do that because I want to. But when you're controlled by somebody, you almost blame them for everything. Well, yeah,
Yeah,
I got to hurry up and get home. But now I go, I got to hurry up because I want to get home.
yeah,
I don't, go out all the time. I don't want to. But when you're restricted and you literally couldn't even go have lunch with your girlfriends because God forbid, what would we really be doing or talking about? Um, you don't know what kind of person you are. Now I know that I am the kind of person I always thought I was. I just never knew it because I didn't have anything blocking my vision, you could say.
yeah. Are you comfortable sharing like any? I mean, you've said some of them, but any other ways where he kind of lashed out or overreacted, or some other ways that he was controlling and possessive? Because so what's unique in your guys' relationship is that weren't you the primary breadwinner for a
Yes,
while?
for a long time.
Yeah. And in a lot of like relationships that are abusive or controlling or possessive, the man controls the finances as a
Mm-hmm.
way to like keep the woman trapped, or nothing's in her name. So if she were to leave, she'd have to start from
Mm-hmm.
from zero. But, you were the one that had a job and you were responsible for a lot of the bills. So that's unique. What are the other ways that he controlled you, or that were you just afraid of him? And so that's why you put up with it, or did you just not? I don't know. Like,
I
what made
mean,
you stay?
I would say when I was younger, I might have been afraid. But like even my father said to me one time, he goes, I always thought you would leave. And I told him, I said, you know, we were together so long, we were so used to each other that he wasn't the kind of person that you just left. If you left, you left, and you left everything. You left your house, your job, you just walked away. Whether I control the finances or not, it wasn't, he would have been somebody that would have just said, no, no, you're going to stay with me whether you like it or not. It was kind of a little bit of a fear. Or maybe I thought he would make a scene, and I'm a very quiet, private person. But, you don't leave. When somebody's like that and they're possessive and they're jealous, you don't leave or tell them to leave. You leave everything. You just leave your life. And outside of his possessiveness and, his controlling and that, I like my life. I like my job. I like my house. Obviously, love my children. You have pets. It is something that you people say, well, just leave, just leave. And another thing about when you're with somebody that's possessive and jealous is you try to hide it because you almost feel like it's your fault that they're like that. Like, oh, maybe I look too hard at another guy, or, I mean, I really wasn't like that, but at the same time, you almost feel like it's your own fault that he's like that. So you think you're keeping that secret, and you're not. Everybody knows he's like that. Even when we just went to that family reunion and they said, well, how are you doing? I'm like, I'm happy. I'm fine. I said, Brent was kind of possessive and controlling. They're like, we know.
Yeah.
It was never a secret. I just thought it was.
Yeah. Well, it's not your fault. You know that now.
Oh, I know that.
And I'm sure you probably realized that, a while ago, because you just said, how he grew up. And
Yeah.
that is a thing when you have, it's called generational trauma.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of books on it. There's a bunch of psychology on it. I read this study not too long ago where there's actual evidence of trauma being carried on people's DNA, like passed down through people's DNA. I didn't read too much into it. I'd have to read more, but it is a real thing, and it is hard to break the cycle.
Yeah.
There's another book out there I think it's called The Body Keeps Score, and it's about how we actually store trauma in our bodies. So if he was seeing things and experiencing things when he was younger as a kid and he didn't get the love, and again, it's not an excuse, but if he didn't get the love he needed as a kid, and the relationship that was modeled to him between his parents was toxic and possessive, and that's the environment that you're growing up in, it's hard to beat your environment, and that becomes what he's used to, and he doesn't even realize that he's like passing that on.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest with you, it's too much to get into, but basically what it sounds like to me is like abandonment issues, right? Because I know his mom was kind of mean.
Yeah.
And I know that he had issues with his dad too. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
like the full extent of those stories, but when you're a child and your natural instinct is to turn to your parents, to turn to your mom, to turn to your dad for love and for comfort. And that's just the animal kingdom. That's what babies do across species, is turn to their parents. And so when you're young and in your developmental years, if you turn to your parents and you don't get what you need and you're not receiving love or compassion or patience or understanding or anything that you expect from a good parent, you start to learn that the world is not going to give that to you. Nobody is going to give that to you. If the two people that created you can't even give that to you, then no one's going to give that to you. And you grow up with this fear of abandonment because whether it's literally or figuratively, your parents abandoned you. So you begin to think that all relationships end and that it's just a matter of time. And people cope with that in different ways. So some people, this is what's called an attachment style, and it's basically how people form connections with others. And it's all rooted in a fear of abandonment. So if you have secure attachment, you're not afraid of being abandoned. Like if people leave, that's their choice. They leave, you're going to be okay, I'm going to be okay, and you move on. People that have insecure attachment are afraid of being abandoned, and they're expecting people to abandon them. They feel like it's inevitable. And the way that people cope with that, some people are dismissive and avoidant, and they avoid relationships altogether because they're like, I can't get close to this person because they're going to end up leaving me. Some people are anxious and fearful, and they cling and they try to hold on to you and they obsess over you and they want constant reassurance. Now, I think the gender thing makes a difference because, and not that women can't also be possessive and controlling and abusive and things like that, but because you guys had an age difference and because he's a man, like that probably manifested in more aggressive ways and more domineering ways. And really, it is connected back to his childhood and the way that he was probably never loved properly either. And that's what's hard is, you look at someone like that and naturally, especially, you gave your whole life to him. So it's different, right? For me, as a grandkid, I spent 22 years with him and I got a different side of him. I look at that and it's hard because naturally you have resentment towards people that hurt the people that you care about, right? You should know better. You shouldn't be doing that to people that you care about. But then you also look and see that hurt people hurt people. So you know that stems from something, and that's rooted in a small child that was also not loved properly. And that's why it is important to break the cycle and for people to be loved differently and loved better. And that cycle's not continuing.
Yeah, I don't think
And
so either.
because mental health is so big now and everybody's more open about talking about it and therapy's like more commonplace, a lot of this stuff, just like in my generation and younger generations and things like that, is being worked through because people are starting to realize the science behind how you grew up and then how it affects your relationships later on, right? So I think at least you can know that. I mean, I am still a little crazy. Like, there's no way that I didn't get some of Grandpa's crazy for sure, but I just deal with it a little bit differently. I cope with it different.
And truthfully, I almost think because he could be sweet one moment and then the next minute he'd be like, where did this come from? You just had no idea. I remember a time when we were supposed to go to a wedding and we're on our way there and he goes, I can't go. I don't have any shoes to wear. And I'm like, you've known for 2 weeks we were going to this wedding and you're just now telling me you don't have any shoes to wear. And we're like screaming at each other in the car. So then, and Christy's with us, your Auntie Christy's with us. And then we pull up in front of the house and we shut the door and we go in the house and I'm like, you want some coffee? And Christy goes, you guys were just screaming at each other. And we had that kind of a relationship where we would just scream. But when I was younger, I didn't scream back. I think it helps to be able to express yourself. When I was younger, I just kind of, hovered in the corner and didn't say anything back. As I got older, if he was going to be obnoxious, I was going to be obnoxious back. So, although and it wasn't a great relationship. It wasn't all bad. I can say that. I can honestly say that, after he passed away, there's stages of grief. There's anger, sadness, acceptance. I think I'm still at the anger stage.
Yeah.
Because I think and something pops up into my mind. It just makes me mad. And then I think about other things like the day I came home and he broke one of my teacups and he tried to hide it from me. And I'm like, why would he want to hide something so trivial from me? And then it makes me feel bad because I think, would I have made that big of a deal out of it? Did I make that big of a deal out of it? So although I say I did have control of a lot of things, finances, he didn't want to break something for fear I'd scream at him. It was a little bit of give and take. He was just stronger and bigger than me. So.
Do you regret not leaving, or are you glad that you did things the way that you did them?
I don't know. Sometimes I regret it because look at me. I'm by myself. I'm in my 60s. And truthfully, I think I'll always be by myself because I don't want to go into another relationship. I don't think I'm capable of doing that. The first time somebody said to me, where were you? I'd like, none of your business. Yeah. I mean, I just wouldn't be able to handle it. So.
Yeah, well, also, not all relationships look like that. You know, I know, and again, this ties into the fact that that's all you ever knew, but healthy relationships add to your life. They don't take from your life, you know? And I think that it's hard. I mean, we have such a different, experience, obviously, growing up in different generations. So it could be hard dating people your age because they grew up in a certain time period and they have certain expectations of what's normal in a relationship and what's not normal. And some of the things that were normalized, at that time or in your guys' generation, I don't necessarily think is healthy now. And I think that, you know, it's maybe not the best way to model a relationship, but I still think that, there are good people out there and there are loving people out there. And I wouldn't be, if you're closed off to relationships because you feel like you're not ready because you still have to grieve grandpa and there's things that you have to accept and move on from and all that, that's different. But I wouldn't be closed off to love just because you had one bad experience with love. And I also know that the dating pool is a bit unique for
Well, and that's a whole other segment you can do because especially, like your Noni and myself, we're both in our 60s and suddenly you're a single woman and, it's just kind of weird.
yeah.
At that age, you're usually with the same person for a long time and, I can't even imagine, like kissing a guy.
Yeah.
It just seems yucky to me.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's just different and it's uncomfortable and it's new and that's
yeah.
just I think the human response to change and to things that are unfamiliar, especially when it was 50 years of your life.
Yeah.
I struggle with change now and I'm 25
Yeah.
and the changes that I'm experiencing, I don't even have 50 years of experience to change from, so I get it. I get how it can be like scary and unfamiliar and you just really haven't dated before.
Yeah.
So it's a unique experience for sure.
And I think that you get that in the gene pool as far as the change goes, because I don't like change.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I keep the same job, live in the same house, stayed with the same person. I don't like upsetting the apple cart, so to speak. I'm very happy if everything stays the same and, I go to work, come home, I'm trying to get out there and trying to be more open but 50 years is a long time and you get used to your life the way it is and even if it's not a perfect life, it's just
It's your life.
what you're used to.
Yeah.
The same car, the same house. I don't like to change anything. I don't even like want to change my phone.
Yeah.
You've got to learn how to do it all over again. It's just too hard.
Yeah. What I know that this might be a hard question for you to answer because so naturally as human beings, I learned this in school actually. We are hardwired to remember negative things more than positive things. It's called like they're more salient. That's the word that they use in communications is negative things are more salient, which means they stick to us more, we remember them more. Like think about like that's why things that are traumatic, like if you were to sit and think about the hardest day in your life that you've ever experienced, the saddest you've ever been, the angriest you've ever been, the most betrayed you've ever felt, if you sit and think about it, you can really relive it almost and experience exactly how you felt on that day in that time because it's a survival instinct because our bodies and our nervous system are trying to help us figure out what to get away from. Oh, this is dangerous. Oh, this is scary. Oh, this makes me sad. So all of these things are going to put us in a position where we can't survive as well. And so our brain holds on to them longer. So it is hard to remember positive things when there's so many negative things. There's a relationship researcher, his name's Dr. John Gottman, and he did a study where basically the findings of the study were that in a relationship, for every one negative interaction you have, every one negative thing that happens between you and your partner, you need 5 positive things to cancel out that one negative thing. So that when you're in a relationship like the one you were in, it's probably way out of balance. Like you're not getting those 5 positive things for every one negative interaction. Or maybe it would be good for a little bit at a time and then it would go back to being bad. Maybe grandpa was bipolar and just undiagnosed, and so he's manic and depressive and whatever. But if you can, and I'll be able to answer some of this probably better than you will because I got a different side of him, but what were some of the good things about Grandpa too, that when you think back, you do miss them, or some of the positive memories that you do have of him.
Well, he did like to surprise me with like clothes. And he surprisingly he was very good at picking out outfits that I would look at him and think, and then I'd put them on and I'm like, I really like this. So he was quite the stylist. So even in our younger years when like the kids were little, he would literally buy me clothes and have them gift wrapped, which is to me was a waste of money because I'm kind of a cheapie. But he wanted to surprise me. It was like a big deal. And I remember going through this cedar chest after he died, and I don't even remember it, but I found the note and said, in the bedroom, there's some new clothes. On the table, there's some money. I won some money today, and I'll be at the office. Please put on something nice and come meet me. And, your loving husband, Brent, it was signed. And it was a sweet thing. So, yeah, he did do things like that. He liked to surprise me. And, of course, he was ecstatic if he got something wonderful at a garage sale. Like the day he said, oh, go look in the bedroom, go look in the bedroom. And I'm like, okay. Thinking, what could it be? It's got to be something cool. And there's this big box that says computer on it. And I'm like, you bought a computer at a garage sale? And he's like, look inside. It was 100 pair of Velcro underwear. Brand new. Still had the tags on. But I'm like, who in their right mind would buy these? And your mom and Auntie Christie can attest that every time one of their friends came over, he went in the other room and grabbed a handful and gave them a handful of underwear. And they'd be so embarrassed.
Strange.
And it was strange. I mean, but I do have a lot of funny memories like that, and I do remember those. But him always trying to surprise me with clothes, like he would bitch and complain, oh, yeah, you're going to work, you're going to dress up for work, but he bought half those clothes. So when you say he might have been little bit bipolar, I think he was. I really do. Just undiagnosed. And someone like that, you're not going to get him to go. I think you need to go to the doctor because I think you're crazy. It's not going to happen, So, there's good and bad. There's good and bad in every relationship. But again, I go back to being young and being married young. And truthfully, I don't care what anybody says. I do believe you should live with somebody before you marry them. Because once you marry them, you've got all the legal parts of it too. And you're commingling your finances when you're older and maybe houses and pets, you need to know somebody. You don't know them till you live with them, for sure.
I remember when I was in like 7th or 8th grade, Grandpa, and it's always before 7 a.m. It's always, I'm not even close to being awake. Like I'll be mid-dream, and that's when Grandpa wants to come in and be like, Des, I got you some stuff from a garage sale. And I cannot say that it was always something that I liked. Actually, 9 times out of 10, it was something that I would never use, never wear. It was something that he thought was cool, which it's still, it's the thought that counts. But I remember one time he came at Mom's old house, he came in and he dumped like a pile of socks that he bought from a garage sale all over the bed, and was like, it's a bunch of socks. They're all paired up. There's new ones. There's cool ones in there. I thought you might be able to use. There was some underwear in there too, and I just didn't even know what to say. Like I didn't have the heart to be like, I don't need all these socks. I don't even know what size they were. I don't know if they were men's, women's. They were just a pile of socks from a garage sale, and I remember that. I also remember. I feel like Grandpa was a passionate person, right? Like everything he did, he had like a lot of passion for. He just felt things very deeply. And so his love for movies, I feel like I inherited his love for movies and music. And he would show me different movies and different music. And it's stuff that I appreciate now. And like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is still one of my favorite movies of all time. And I think of him when I watch that movie. The other thing that makes me emotional when I think about it is and this is how me and Caden and Cash got a different side of him. But he loved us like so much, and he thought so highly of us, and he would always, brag about us and talk about all these different things we were doing, and he would walk up to people and ask if they knew us just because it was maybe a gym that we went to, or some, like, if he was at like a high school event, do you know Des or do you know Caden? Because he thought, like, in his eyes we were celebrities, we were like the greatest things. And so, when I'm having a bad day, I think about, like, the way that Grandpa would see me,
And he actually did that with me too. We go, oh, my wife is the manager of here, or she's doing that, So he did. I mean, again, I sometimes I just think he was just bipolar.
Yeah.
He'd be okay one minute, the next minute he'd be mad about something. And you'd think to yourself, what now?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. We were just having coffee, So
Little moody. Yeah. But he was very fiery, and he was stubborn, and he had a temper on him, and I definitely got all of those things from him. And, I feel like I also learned how to, like, stand up for myself through him and through Mom and through Dad too. But, like, that part of his personality that's just very, like, passionate and committed, and I feel like I got that part of my personality from him. It didn't always manifest again in healthy ways, but
yeah. And I feel like I was just a more of a meek, milder person, and that's why I stood up with it for so long.
Yeah.
But I do think as I got older, I got stronger.
Yeah.
I don't have a meanness in me. Sometimes that's bad in my occupation because I manage
I beg to
people.
differ.
But well,
I'm just kidding. You're just blunt, and I feel like it's come from you putting up with shit for so long.
Yeah, that's
that sometimes
true.
you'll say things, and I'm like, damn, okay.
Yeah.
If you want to put it that way, no filter whatsoever.
You're
But
right.
do you feel like you saw a different side of Grandpa with us than you saw with, like, Mom and Christy?
I do think he changed a lot by the time the grandchildren came along. And I think, again, age changes you. And there's something about, like with kids, you're responsible for them. You worry about everything. But when the grandkids come along, all you got to do is enjoy them. And it brings things back, like Halloween becomes special again, Christmas, Easter, and it's so much more fun, So I think by then he kind of relaxed and really just got to enjoy it, and maybe felt a little bit guilty because he was a little hard on your mom and your Auntie Christy. Like he was always worrying that they were doing something wrong, and they were really just good kids. He should have just left them alone and let them be good kids. But he was always thinking that they were going to do something. And, same thing with me. He was like that again. It goes back to his personality. I mean, what makes him think if somebody's 15 minutes late from work, that they're out doing something? For crying out loud, it's impossible.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you knew the person, it would still be impossible. But he never saw it that way. He's like, where were you? Why did it take you so long to get work? Well, traffic jam. I don't know. Sometimes it was hard. Sometimes it was frustrating. You just want to come home from work and relax. And, right away it was, where were you? Why were you late? Or, I came in there to see you and I couldn't find you. I was in the office doing paperwork. I don't know. I mean, that part was very hard, but it wasn't all bad. There were some good things, but, you're right about your mind. It'll go to the more traumatic things in your life, and you forget about the good stuff. But, I mean, all in all, I'm glad that I stayed. I'm glad that I had my family, my grandchildren. We don't know what life would have been like if it were different. We can say, oh, my life would have been so much better if I had married him, hadn't had Sonny and Christy, but really, would it have been? Because they lead to Hugh and Caden and Cash and Jordan. So, I mean, it's what it was supposed to be. But it's still, again, just not young. Don't marry somebody when you're young and don't know any better.
Yeah.
And for God's sakes, the worst thing a woman can do is to wind up pregnant with somebody that they just barely met. And it's happening right now. We all know that. And then you're attached to that person for life, whether you want to be or not, because now you have that baby and that person is the baby's father. So, you know,
Yeah.
birth control.
I know that you have, mixed feelings about all of it. I can't remember if we've ever really had a deeper conversation about this, but because you had like that underlying resentment and even now you're still in that angry phase, but you also had love for him, what was it like for you experiencing him passing away? Like his dying process and then him actually passing away.
Well, he was so sick and for so long, and you saw him going from a big strong man to literally I had to help him get up to go to the bathroom. So truthfully, his passing was kind of a relief, because I know he didn't want to live that way. It wasn't the same person even 2 years prior to that. So it's sad to see somebody deteriorate like that. And then it sounds cruel to say, but it's almost a sense of relief because you're not up all night. You're not, doctors trying to take care of the pills. It was almost a year taking care of him. So, and for him, I think it was a relief too. I don't think he wanted to be like that. I think I do believe in a higher power, and he was happy. He went off and did things
Yeah.
after that. And he's probably sitting in here right now going, I can't believe it. She said that things about me. Boy, am I going to have a talking to her. But, I mean, and again, there's a relief. And now for my life at my age, I kind of enjoy it. If I have to stay after work, and sometimes I do, especially in my position, I don't have to worry about it. I'm not, oh, I gotta get out of here. It's 5 minutes to 5 and I'm still here and I've got to wind this down because I got to get home. I just putter around and take my time. If I want to go to the store after work, I go. Normally, I would have to go home, check in, then go to the store. I mean, I really do enjoy my life.
Yeah.
You
What
know,
are you've been traveling more
I've been
now?
doing a lot of that. I feel like I went to the Mediterranean,
She just went to Greece with
went
my
to
other grandma.
Greece.
They
It,
got
it was
turned up in
my
Greece.
bucket list trip. And then we went to Canada. Unfortunately, you couldn't go.
Mm-hmm.
But to go back there and see my family, it was just a wonderful, wonderful summer of traveling. And truthfully, he was a bear to travel with. When are we going? When are we going? When are we going home? When are we going home? He was like a child sometimes. He used to really make me mad. And
And you went to New Orleans, St. Louis.
I went to New Orleans
Mm-hmm.
the summer before. So we went to San Clemente. I've done a lot of traveling. I do it in the summer, obviously, because of my occupation. But really enjoy it.
Yeah.
Just, and then when you're not worrying about somebody saying, well, why'd you take that walk? We're on vacation and yet you choose to walk alone. I like to walk alone. So now I can be me. I can do those things. The trip to the Mediterranean was a wonderful, wonderful trip. Canada was absolutely wonderful. I can't wait till next year to see what I do next time.
Yeah.
It's just, and little things like that, just really, really, if I want to go out with my girlfriend for lunch, I go out. Meet a friend, a male friend, not a date, but a male friend, I can do that. You can be friends with people and it doesn't have to be, a
Romantic.
relationship or romantic. So I'm enjoying myself now.
Yeah.
A little late to
It's never too
finally
late.
feel like myself, but I do. I enjoy myself.
Yeah.
I
Better
don't know
late
what the
than
next
never.
chapter is going to be, but for now, I'm just kind of content with what it is.
Mm-hmm. And I believe that when we pass away, we become a higher version of ourselves, a better version of ourselves. Our spirit, our soul, whatever you want to call it. When we go to heaven or become one with the universe or whatever you might believe, I think that it's a higher version of ourselves. So I think I feel confident saying that I know Grandpa is happy that you're getting to do this now. And I'm sure that, wherever he's at now, he's learned and has retrospect and looked at his life and wishes he had done things differently. And so I know and I believe that, he wants you to have any happiness that he might have taken from you during his time here.
And I do believe that too.
Yeah.
I do believe that he's gone to a better place, and he knows that all those ridiculous things he was accusing me of never happened. And I'm like, good, I'm glad you finally know. 'Cause I couldn't convince you when you were alive. But I do think he's in a happier place.
I do too.
So,
Do you have days where you miss him, or do you feel like that your life has gotten so much better that, you just don't really think about it? And you don't need to have guilt about it.
yeah, I had one day where I couldn't get the hose off. And then I went and got a pipe and tried to get it off, and it wouldn't come off. And I remember sitting in the rocks going, gosh, damn it. I shouldn't have to do this. He should be doing this. But then, the neighbor across the street came and fixed it, and I was okay. So for the most part, I'm kind of just happy.
Yeah.
There are little things you miss. Like, he did used to make me tea when I got up in the morning. Somebody to talk to. Even if it wasn't a good conversation, it's a conversation. Now I talk to my cats.
And me, come on.
Well, I talk to you all
Give
the
me
time.
credit. We do our dinner once a week.
Every Monday.
I
Yes.
see you more than Cash or Kaden.
I know.
I know it. I'm the favorite. You guys hear that? On the record, I'm the favorite grandchild. I put my work in.
I do enjoy my life right now.
Yeah. I know you kind of have said, living with someone before you get married, waiting till you're older. What other advice would you give to young people before they pick a partner and settle down? And also to anyone who might be in a relationship where they're not happy now, what would be your advice?
In a relationship where they're not happy now, evaluate. Because if you're not happy, you only have one life. Live it. Live it to the fullest. And know the signs. If you're young and you're with somebody, if they question where you are, if they accuse you of doing things that you wouldn't even fantasize about, that's a sign. If they don't get along with their family, if they want to separate you from your family and live someplace away from them, if they, I don't like your brother because, or I don't like your mom because, then that's a sign. If you're going to pick a partner, again, living with them is going to be a big thing, but make sure that they're kind and they get along with their mother. Your grandpa didn't get along with his mom. That's another key thing there. How they treat animals. Are they good to animals? There's a lot of little warning signs, subtle, that you don't think about when you're young. But when you're older, you're like, I could never like a guy that doesn't like dogs or is questioning me because I went to the store and it took me an hour instead of 45 minutes. Little things like that.
Yeah.
It comes with age too, but, just look for the warning signs.
Yeah.
Don't marry young.
Yeah, experience your life, I guess, before you...
because you can't go back. I could say, well, I never got to do all the things a young person can do. And I might say, I'm single now, I can do all, but you can't. There are things you just can't do at my age, and you wouldn't want to do. But the point being is, be young, be free, and live your life. And then when you're ready, settle down, have that family.
What's funny is right now, actually, the pendulum has swung like the complete other way. So you growing up in your era, I feel like marriage and kids and a nuclear family and, establishing that was very valued. And that was something that like men and women both strived for, and they wanted to build with each other and they wanted a partner and they wanted a family. Right now, for like my age and out in the dating world, it is what I call a pandemic of non-commitment. So everyone is, and this may sound good to you since you were on the other extreme, but I can tell you from experience that it's ass. And it's basically no one wants to commit to each other because they feel like, with the internet or whatever the case may be, especially in Las Vegas, because there's a different dynamic in this city, I think, than other cities. But people feel like they have so many options, and that the grass is always greener, and it's just this endless scrolling of, oh, she's pretty, or he's attractive, and people can't stay focused on one person, and they're not investing or working towards something with one person. So it's hard because you don't want it to go to the point that you were at, where it's like, this person is obviously not for you and obviously isn't giving you what you need and loving you the way you need. So you don't want to stay in that situation. But it's also like, relationships take work, and it's not always fun, and it's not always rainbows and butterflies. Sometimes you argue. Sometimes, you have to take the time to work through differences and come out the other side of that better together. That's like a healthy relationship. But right now, it's just basically everyone just wants casual hookups, or everyone wants someone to play boyfriend or play girlfriend, but they don't want the commitment of not being able to see other people.
Mhm.
And so it's really hard because it's discouraging. I would say it probably more affects women than men, because I think naturally, so this is hard because men and women as human beings both want partnership. We're wired as a human
Mhm.
species to partner and to procreate and to be together. So it's not necessarily that women want relationships any more than men. Like, that is a myth. It has to do with men and their testosterone and them wanting to have sex with multiple people, and women are more willing to have sex with just one person. So it's the commitment aspect, because men like romance. Men like having a good woman to support them and love them and give them girlfriend treatment. So it's not that men don't want relationships, men don't want commitment. And so I would say that women are being more adversely affected by that right now than men, because men won't partner. They refuse to partner. They want to have their cake and eat it too. And so it's just like the complete opposite problem to what you're experiencing,
Yeah.
is that they refuse to commit to you and tie you down and do all of that. But, hopefully things balance out eventually. Did you want to add anything that I didn't already cover?
No, I think we covered it all.
A little bit of
A
everything.
little bit of
Yeah.
everything.
All right. Well, thank you, Grandma, for coming on and talking about this with me. If you guys have any other questions for my grandma or want to continue the conversation, I'll have her contact information available on my social media channels. And I will see you again in 2 weeks to talk more elephants.